You're locked in to the hottest station on the planet.
Resistance is futile. The revolution has begun.
You're listening to Rebelpreneur Radio, helping you break the rules and build the business you need for the life you want. And now, broadcasting his pirate signal from somewhere beyond the status quo, here's your host, best-selling author, marketing and media strategist, Ralph Brogden.
Hello and welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio. It's the show that helps you build the business you need so you can live the life you want. I am Ralph Brogden. Well, how do you personally deal with your sense that you are not enough? It's that mentality or that fear that you are an imposter, that you're not as good as other people think that you are, or you're not as good as you think that you should be. And, you know, as a Rebelpreneur, as a business owner, as someone who is stepping up and stepping out to create the business that you need for the life that you want, you've got to figure out how to let go of fear and step into who you really are. And that means raising your level of consciousness. So today's guest is a real expert on teaching us how to do that, how to let go of fear and feel enough in your business. I'm speaking today with Tyson Sharpe. He is on a mission to raise the level of consciousness for online business owners. Tyson has coached hundreds of online business owners, helping them transcend their patterns of fear, doubt, and frustration so they can build a more conscious business as an extension of their personal awakening. All the way from the land down under, Tyson Sharpe, welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio.
Thanks, Ralph. Thanks for having me.
Tell us what it means when you say to raise the level of consciousness for online business owners. What does that mean?
Oh, it's a big question. So basically, many people can feel that around the planet, you know, we're basically heightening a level of consciousness. So in terms of the world of entrepreneurship, I find that there's many different levels of consciousness. There's generally 4 main levels of consciousness. Many that are in personal development will recognize the difference when they move, for example, from a victim when they feel like life is happening to them, to when they actually start to move more into the achiever phase. And then they start to realize and recognize that they actually control the direction of their life, right? They can control their thoughts, they can control their actions, their emotions, and they can actually, life can actually happen from them. Right? So they move from a victim stage where things happen to me to life happens from me. And I find that's a huge leap. That's why people get into personal development, but it's also where people can get stuck. If you're stuck in the achiever mentality, it's your hustle, grind, working hard. If that's no longer getting you the results or you're no longer living the quality of life you want, I find the increasing to a 3rd level of consciousness, which is really where you become the channel, or what Michael Beckwith would say, you become the channel. This is what I call working from, basically moving from achiever to receiver, where you actually step back and you can actually reach a level of consciousness where, you know, where things are flowing through you, answers and ideas and insights are flowing through you. It's almost like you're just the channel that's happening from. And so that's the real channel. That's the real consciousness level that I like to work from and shift people to. And I find that people, you know, accelerate their business success when they work from that level of consciousness, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. And I think that well, hopefully, I mean, I can say that I have probably hit that receiver zone, a couple of times. I don't say I live there all the time, but you get into a zone, you get into a flow, and it is almost as if everything is effortless, and there's this stream of creativity flowing through you. So your job is to try to get us to live in that place all the time and not just hit there every so often.
Yeah. And you go through ebbs and flows of different levels of consciousness. The 4th level is really a state of oneness, right? So that's when you feel connected to everything. But basically once you reach a different level, it's almost like that's your set point now. And it's almost like you can still go in ebbs and flows, like I said, but once you reach a different level of consciousness, you start to have a bit of an awakening. That's really where you now operate from the majority of the time. That's really your center place. And so that's what I'm finding with a lot of my clients and a lot of people in my communities, is that when they start to become aware, they start to become more awake to who and what they are. It really becomes their base, and it really becomes a place where they can where they reside from. And so that's where things, like you described, become effortless, and ideas flow through, and you can actually start to relax a little bit and allow more of your intuition. Not to go into more of the woo woo stuff. I don't view myself as too woo woo, but but it's so true when you're in flow, right? So when you're in flow and things are aligned, and you feel like it's flowing through you, then that's when you reach a different level of consciousness that's higher than just the achiever or the hustle mentality and all those different things. So I'd love to spark some questions and get a conversation going around where it is you can feel where you're at, and where all this fear and doubt and worry and frustration, stress comes into it.
Yeah, that's a real ninja move. I've never resonated with the hustle, get up every day and grind. To me, that's just more like 9 to 5, go out and hustle and grind that way. And I started a business to avoid that. Not that I don't work harder or even harder, but there's a different purpose in my life as a rebelpreneur compared to working at a typical corporate job, where it is like a rat race, or it is a hustle and grind. And so, this is real ninja for us to get into this space so that what we're doing is in alignment with who we are. Before we get into the specifics, because I want to explore that with you, but first I want to find out a little bit more about yourself. How did you come to this awareness? What is your background and your journey look like?
Yeah, I basically, growing up, my only real interest in school was the brain, and was human behavior and psychology. And so when I left high school, I got into university. I did 6 years of studying psychology and organizational psychology, all those different things. And when I graduated, I was like most people graduating, had no clue what I wanted to do. And I described myself as a lost little puppy. And instead of jumping into a career, instead of jumping into something that, society told me I should, I went over to Canada and lived in Canada for 2 years. And while I was over there, although I was very, very happy on a day-to-day basis, I definitely learned the difference between happiness and fulfillment, because I lacked fulfillment. While I was there for the 2 years, I had lack of meaning, lack of purpose, lack of direction. I wasn't contributing at levels I knew I could, and I wasn't following my internal. I wasn't following my heart, following what the scary leaps I knew I could be taking. And so that's when I got into a lot of personal development. And a real turning point for me was when I invested half of everything I had in the bank while I was over there, a poor traveling Australian, and invested in a coaching course, a Tony Robbins coaching course, learning all the tools, tactics, strategies, how to create huge shifts in people, and also recognizing and learning where it is that most people get held back and the unconscious patterns that stop us living the quality life we want. And I just fell in love with it so much. I was watching the Tony Robbins intervention videos and I was just bawling my eyes out, just getting so it just hit me at my core how quickly people can shift and how unconscious these patterns can be. And so that's when I moved back to my hometown of Melbourne and started my own online coaching business about 4.5 years ago.
Super. So tell us, who do you work with? Who was an ideal client for you?
Yes, I work with online business owners. A lot of them are B2B consultants, things of that nature. People who are really they found some success, but they're starting to recognize that there's a lot more answers internally, right? Because when you create those internal shifts, the external results will just be a byproduct of those shifts. And so a lot of my clients are finding that they're actually starting to build businesses from fear and from scarcity and from lack, and they can start to feel that. It was previously unconscious to them, but a lot of people start coming to me in my work and in my groups and things like that when they start to realize, oh my God, I'm actually building a business because I don't want to feel the opposite. I want more success because at some level, I think that's going to fill this void that's within me that wants to feel enough, that wants to feel worthy, that wants to feel safe. And so they're trying to get that external success and build that business because they think it's going to fill that void that's within them.
And that's probably the case with a lot of self-employed people, not just online business owners, but probably that motivates a lot of people. And I think also the fear of not making money or not making my quota or not making the sale. If we aren't careful, we can really find ourselves in this place of negative energy where it is operating from a place of lack, and then that just kind of accelerates our poverty, doesn't it?
Yes, correct. And that's the world, that's the Western world we live in. A lot of people have been trained, consciously or unconsciously, that in order to receive love when we're a child, that often meant success. It meant I need to succeed or achieve or, do something externally in order to feel enough so that I'm worthy of the love that matters most to me, right? Unconsciously, when we're children, the love of our parents means our very survival. So that's why when we learn to achieve as a child and we got that love, it's actually linked to survival, right? And that's why when we run into an obstacle in business, it often triggers that fight-flight response because it's actually unconsciously linked to death. Right? It makes no sense when you think about it, cerebrally, when you're like, why when my Facebook ads don't work, or why when this prospect says no, or I need to do my outreach or whatever it may be, or I need to do something, on social media, why is it that I'm feeling like my life's in danger? And that's why, right? It's the link. And so that's what I'm finding. The more people I coach, the more people who come into my work, you can very quickly see the pattern, right? And the question I ask, basically everyone is, what would what would you feel if your biggest goals didn't come true? If you have this goal for the next year, the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, what if that actually never happened? What if you actually never achieved it? And if that brings up some fear, some worry, some doubt, some frustration, some guilt, some disappointment, whatever it may be, there's actually some unconscious patterns or sometimes conscious, but there are some emotional patterns within you that's holding back your success and holding back your level of resourcefulness that you could be bringing into your business, if that makes sense.
That's a very interesting question to ask yourself. And that kind of opens up the proverbial can of worms there is, how do you respond to the possibility of failure? And you're right. I think that does, get down to the heart of the matter. What's the biggest challenge with getting past that? What is holding us back, and what causes us to stay in that place of fear and not move forward? Is there a common problem or obstacle that you see over and over again with the people you work with?
Yeah, totally. So everyone who's listening right now, and probably you as well, Ralph, including myself, we can do this all the time. I do this all day, every day. I've been on the challenge of meditating and doing extended meditations in silence. So I've been meditating in silence for about 2 hours a day for the last 6 months or so. And so this is particularly this is my main focus. And that is when you feel in your body, you know exactly what it feels like when you have this fear, when you have this scarcity, when you have this lack, when you imagine not accomplishing your goals. Mm-hmm. And all that's coming up when you feel this fear or this worry or doubt, all that is almost like an internal 5-year-old. Like I described just before, what's coming up in the form of fear is an internal 5-year-old who holds a belief that says, I need to achieve this in order to feel enough, right? And as this internal 5-year-old comes up, what most people do, to answer your question, Ralph, what most people do is they avoid that emotion or they resist that emotion, right? So they avoid it by trying to fix something so they don't feel it, or they avoid and distract themselves, or they actually resist it, saying that this fear is wrong. I need to feel something different. I need to change it. It needs to be fixed, right? And that's like if there was a 5-year-old, another person's 5-year-old in the park, and this other person's 5-year-old comes up to you in the park, and let's say they've lost their parents. So you can see there's love in their eyes, but they're very scared. And that's almost like going up to this 5-year-old and saying, go away, little kid, until you feel better. Or it's wrong you're feeling this way. Or you should be feeling something different. You need to be fixed. Right? How loved would that child feel? Right?
Right.
And obviously we would never do that. If we were in that park, we would just be that loving, safe space for the child to feel however they want to feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we would never tell them to go away until they feel better, or they need to be fixed or something wrong with them. But that's exactly what we do to our internal 5-year-olds when these patterns come up. What most people don't recognize is these patterns are coming up because they're ready to transcend. They're coming up so they can come out. But when we avoid or resist these emotions and these patterns, we actually push them down for them to grow unconsciously. And so it actually presents a really, really good opportunity right now for you to feel the fear, feel what it feels like in your body, and actually hold the safe space for that emotion to be there. And the reason being is because no fear can continue to exist in a space where it is actually seen, where it is actually understood, where it is actually loved. But all fear will continue in a space where you don't want it to be there. So that's really the paradigm shift that many people could take away here. If you can feel right now what the feeling is in your body when you feel fear, when you feel worry or doubt or stress, if you just were to take a deep breath and you were to actually feel it, you were to actually feel what it feels like in your body, pay attention to it, feel what it feels like, and describe it in detail, you can actually be the safe space and hold the space for it and allow it and welcome it to be there. And the more you welcome it, the more you hold the safe space for this pattern, for this internal 5-year-old, the more that pattern will start to fade away and start to transcend.
Interesting.
Start to leave.
Very interesting. Are there any things that our listeners could do, or that I could do, or that you do, that could get us on the road towards embracing this instead of resisting it, so that we can transcend it?
Yeah, totally. So it's just really an awareness, because if these patterns are coming up anyway, right? And if you feel it, it's in you, right? Regardless of if you distract yourself or if you resist it, it's still in you. So that's why I find a lot of people in the achiever phase, what helps many people in personal development depends on which level of consciousness they're at. So if you're at the victim stage, even at the achiever stage, what's basically going to work for you is reframing this. And it might help to distract yourself. It might help to resist it and show that you're not this emotion. What I find is many people in the personal development field and who are running online businesses are at the point now where this is coming up so much, or it's existing unconsciously, where now it's in their benefit to actually feel it. So it really comes with some awareness to say that this is already in you, but what allows it to come up, and what allows you to hold the space to feel it fully without resistance and without judgment, is to remind yourself that you're not this emotion, right? You're not this pattern. You're not the emotion. That's why you're able to describe it to me. But in fact, you're the observer of it. You're the consciousness that's observing all of this. You're the observer that's observing this emotion coming up, the observer of your body, right? You're not this emotion. And so this really starts to break away the story that feeling uncomfortable is bad, right? Feeling uncomfortable is bad. I actually, when I did this for the first day, about 6 months ago, I meditated for 6 hours in one day. And I just allowed all of the emotions to come up. I allowed all of the patterns and thoughts and doubts and worries to come up. You know, if you're a business owner and you sit in a chair for 6 hours, you're going to have some stuff come up saying you should be doing this, you should be doing that, you should be doing more income generating activities. You know, you should be nurturing your audience, whatever it may be.
Well, see, that's my problem, Tyson. Every time I'm working on one thing, my mind is saying I should be over here working on this thing. And then I go to that thing and start working on that. And it says, well, you should be over here working on this thing. And there's always another thing out there that needs working on.
Yeah, I would be there. I would hold the safe space for the side of you that thinks you should be doing something else.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people, this is just opening a huge level of awareness, because what most people are acting from, I don't think you should go out and meditate for 6 hours or 2 hours or whatever, but you can, to increase your level of consciousness and to increase your level of awareness and to transcend these patterns. It's all about dropping your resistance and dropping your judgment to it. Because the more you feel it, the more you hold space for that emotion to be there, the more it'll transcend.
I think I'm grasping. I think I'm grasping what you're saying. It's in the vision that came to my mind as you're talking is it's like first of all, if you're doing something scary, you should feel afraid, right? So if you're, because that's natural, that's part of who you are. So if I'm going to climb Mount Everest, I could take one of two approaches. I could say, well, I shouldn't be afraid of this and try to deny it and suppress it and hold it back. And I'm constantly using energy fighting against this feeling. Or I could be a professional and say, you know what? Fear comes with what I'm doing, because what I'm doing is scary.
Yeah.
But instead of trying to deny that and say, well, I'm not scared when you really are, just, as you're saying, give that feeling a safe place. Acknowledge that. Stop fighting it. Stop resisting it. And just realize this is part of the process, part of the journey. It's to deal with it and to manage it, not to eliminate it altogether. Is that the gist of what we're trying to do? Yeah.
So fear will come up, but it's recognizing also what fear is. Fear is like because it's one thing when you're climbing Mount Everest to be actually in a physical dangerous situation, right? And you can be responsible about it, because you can feel the fear and you can transcend it, but you can also operate from a place of safety and a place of resourcefulness. In the world of business, you can notice that there's patterns coming up that hold particular stories, right? Because you have a story, you have a belief. This inner child that's coming up has a belief that says, if I fail, I'm going to feel like I'm not enough. If I fail in front of people, I'm not going to feel worthy, right? If I do this Facebook Live and no one watches, I'm going to feel embarrassed. I'm going to feel unloved. I'm not going to feel seen. And so a lot of people operating in business, they operate in business day in, day out, doing the tasks they think they should be doing, but it's actually the tasks that their 5-year-old thinks they need to do in order to feel enough, right? So going from task to task, or doing a particular campaign to get a particular result, or doing something in order to feel better, right? So they're doing things and tasks and being and almost unconsciously doing things in business so they can avoid feeling fear, and so that 5-year-old within them can feel like they're enough. What I'm encouraging people to do, instead of taking action from that place, is actually start to look at the 5-year-old and actually start to hold space for the 5-year-old that is driving these behaviors. So I had a client the other day who basically when he was operating in his business, he would start to feel the lack of money or the lack of sales. And so he would go out and try and make more sales. What I was saying was, and what I helped him understand, is that when you have that 5-year-old freak out because you feel like you need money to be safe, the worst thing you can do is go out and make more money, and go and hustle to get more money, because you've just avoided a side of you, right? By you're going and trying to find more money rather than looking at the side of you that feels like you need money in order to be safe or enough, right? And so when you hold the space for that 5-year-old and you allow that pattern to transcend, you can actually go and make more money, but you're not doing it from a place of fear and lack and scarcity. You're doing it from a place of flow, a place of alignment, a place of creativity, right? A place of resourcefulness. And therefore money and success and your business growth will just be a byproduct of the shifts you're making internally. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Well, that sounds really fascinating. I think that just about every business owner would benefit from checking this out more closely, their mindset, level of consciousness. And I really love these 4 layers, 4 levels of consciousness that you're talking about. Would love to get up to that place of oneness. What is the best way for our listeners to reach out to you, Tyson?
Yeah, sure. So I have a Facebook group that's full of online entrepreneurs who are doing this sort of thing. It's quickly grown over to 1,000 members, and that's where I do a lot of live coaching on Zoom, and I do a lot of I do some cool content where people can dive in deep and actually do this stuff. And they can do it as a collaborative group. So the name is called Connect, Contribute, Collaborate. I'm sure you'll put a link, because it's not the most effective name in shouting it out on a radio show, but it's called Connect, Contribute, Collaborate. It's hearts and the business owners who are connecting and collaborating with each other, and who are also who love doing this sort of work. But also on the podcast, I launched a podcast about 3 weeks ago. So it's going in deep and doing these exercises and doing these, and diving in deep and more awareness around this. And that's called Awaken Your Business, the Awaken Your Business podcast.
Excellent. Okay. Well, we'll put at least one of those links on the Rebelpreneur website, your website, as well as TysonCoaching.com. And so I encourage our listeners to go check that out. These are some resources and some tools that are available to you. And you're not going to change everything in your life and in your business and in your mind after just 1 or 2 exercises. But like Tyson is saying, you can make rapid shifts a lot faster than you thought if you go to work on that mindset, raising the level of your consciousness. This has really been, I feel like you've raised the level of our conversation here, Tyson, as we are trying to be, more conscious business owners and serving the world, serving our clients at a higher level. So I really appreciate your wisdom. Any final thoughts that you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, just final thoughts throughout your day, throughout your week, whatever feels aligned for you. Just recognize where you're resisting emotion. Definitely recognize when you're resisting or avoiding an emotion, thinking you should be feeling something different, because these are the opportunities you present yourself to feel fully and love the sides of you haven't loved unconditionally yet.
Excellent. I've been speaking with Tyson Sharpe. He is on a mission to raise the level of consciousness for online business owners. He has coached hundreds of online business owners and has helped them to transcend their patterns of fear, doubt, and frustration so they can build a more conscious business as an extension of their personal awakening. You can find out more at TysonCoaching.com. We'll have that and the other links on the Rebelpreneur website as well. Well, Tyson, thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise with us. I really appreciate you being on Rebelpreneur Radio today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Ralph.
You've been listening to Rebelpreneur Radio with Ralph Brogden. Download the show notes and much more at rebelpreneur.com.